We have one final presenter, last but not least. Very excited to be joined by Jamie Lawyer, who is the Chief Experience Officer at the Reuben. There she drives the digital vision, values, and strategy, working to foster public engagement through physical, interpersonal, and digital interactions. During the pandemic, she played a key role in supporting closure, reopening, and staff and visitor safety initiatives, among many other projects she was working on. So please help me to welcome Jamie Lawyer.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And thank you to all the presenters today, Bard Graduate Center, for the opportunity to be able to talk about this right now. And also for those of you who are tuning in online and are currently in the space at almost 4 p.m. on a Friday, congrats to all of you. Thank you for showing up and being here. And I hope that this presentation is engaging enough to have you stay committed, at least for the next half hour. I'll let you go at the last 10 minutes, but thank you so much for your time. So, my role as the Chief Experience Officer at the Rubin Museum of Art, I'm thinking so much about the connections that our audiences are making with us. And to me, about the museum experience, every single interaction we have with them is a make or break moment. What works today might break down tomorrow. That kindness from a security guard that you see in the space, that totally can absolutely shape your experience. If that fails, it doesn't matter about the beautiful exhibition on the wall. We have let our audiences down and we have broken their trust. And trust can be, we know how hard it is in our personal lives to gain trust and how much easier it is to lose that. So for us, when I think about this and about the importance of care and practice, I want to go through some examples with you all about how did that manifest at the Reuben during lockdown. I'll use some examples there to show you where we're going in the future and what's possible. So for those of you who do not know how do I advance next? Yeah, thanks. Okay, so about the Reuben, we formed around 2004. We're located at 150 West 17th Street, located in Chelsea, open between Thursdays and Sundays, and free on Friday nights from 6 to 10. So there's the pitch. Please come visit. But we're a museum that's really dedicated to inviting audiences in to make connection to the art and the ideas from across the Himalayan regions. And we like to ask some pretty big questions about the things that connect us and make us human as part of that enterprise. Because we sort of look at it this way: if we can help people become more aware of what's happening inside them, then they will have the agency to create change in their broader world. So it's a pretty tall order. Again, it's Friday, so if we can achieve that today, but we try and really push the boundary, and our art really helps us do that. And if you walk through our galleries at any given moment, and specifically to zoom way back to March of 2020, and you began to really look at our art, you would begin to hear stories about how do you alleviate suffering? What about some ideas of compassion and how that shows up? What are ways that we can feel protected and safe and reduce these fears that surround us? Somehow we chose impermanence as our 2020 theme with the hashtag engage with change. So we're thinking about this because it's rooted in the art from our collection and the ideas that we represent. We have spaces that are dedicated to helping people understand art in context. So you see the Tibetan Buddhist shrine room up here on the left. Also, we had a contemporary exhibition featuring Felix Gonzalez Torres, Terrence Simon, and a range of other exciting contemporary artists who are really wrestling with these themes in a contemporary way. So this helps you get a little bit of an understanding about us and how we're thinking about content and the inspiration that surrounds us on our walls. Well, I mean, you know how it really goes from here. March 13th hits, everything shuts down. You've read this, your insurance company sent this out to you, like everyone, this is the moment, right? So I told you a little bit about us. What we knew before the pandemic was, I want to tell you a little bit about our visitors and the way that we were understood about our visitors before the pandemic. And what you see here is a breakdown from research we did with Sliver Lynette, who really produces a research model that's about what's motivating audiences, right? At their core, why are they showing up? What do they want from you? And why do they return? So here you see some different audience, what we call audience segments, right? You see receptive learners down at the bottom, people that hunger for information. You will find some variation of this in every single museum as an intellectual experience. You see people who are interested in participation and activation. Those of you who opted for an in-person experience, I have a feeling you probably, are in there in some form, right? But also these are folks who like things that are novel and new. Moving up to the top, and I don't want to lump these three together, but they share a lot in common. At the top, we're looking at people who are searching for respite. We're looking at people who are desiring an ability to improve in their own lives, and also people who are looking for inspiration, for something bigger than themselves, a connection to something greater, right? So that's a bit about our audiences, but the quotes, the things you won't see in written and 60-page research reports, the Reuben for me, it's a school, a home, a life draft, a cosmic journey. I always feel peaceful after visiting. I felt my blood pressure lower. The museum has a feeling of a sacred space that nourishes the deepest parts of yourself and manages to achieve something I felt was pretty damn profound and moving. So we have very generous audiences who are having intense connections with us. So understanding this, we knew we as an organization, we're thinking about audiences in a very specific way because they're thinking about us and how we fit into their lives in very specific ways. So understanding what I just described to you, the first challenge was, how do you translate these visceral physical experiences into the online space, right? So these are some of the priorities we were thinking about initially as an organization. How do you create a measured response with clear messaging? I know I have some marketing folks in the room, right? With clear messaging, that's for audiences, so you know how audiences can engage with you, but also for staff, right? What are staff supposed to do? We're an organization about 60 folks, right? So we have to really be thinking about resources, as many organizations do, in quite intentional ways. Whether you have 1,000 employees or a small staff, thinking about staff needs is a key aspect. And I'll soapbox about that a little bit later. And lastly, you have to be honest. How does your organization differentiate itself in this highly competitive landscape? That is honesty, that is a hard look at what you do, and being real. Suddenly, everyone is your competitor. In the online landscape, we're competing with organizations that are in California. We're competing with the Met, right? There's a new way that organizations have to think about how they're existing in this new world. So while we had these priorities in mind, the thing that was underneath everything was care and concern. How are our audiences feeling right now? I showed you some of those quotes. What are they going through? We know what our staff was going through. Many of you can flash back to that moment and maybe still sometimes are relating this way. Where are you in a given moment? How might the Reuben be of service to audiences during a time of instability? This could be a pandemic. This could be a loss in their life. This could be a breakup. It could be an exciting new transition. Where can we really support audiences? And also, never forget this. How can we support staff during a time of uncertainty? Staff cannot be left behind. So these are the things we're holding at the center of what we're offering. So again, it's Friday, a little bit of a grid. So for those of you who enjoy grids, those of you who don't, I apologize. I'll move through this phase very quickly. So here is a sort of impact effort grid. I'm actually really excited to do this over the weekend in my own life to see what my thankless tasks are. But nonetheless, if you think about this grid at the bottom is the amount of effort. How much are you putting into things? And you see low effort, and then you see high effort. And on the left, you see the impact of your offer. You see low and you see high. Now, let's map in what this means for, say, an organizational strategy. What are the things you're filling in quickly? What are the things that are quick wins, high impact, low effort for you to do? What are some of the major projects? And what are the thankless tasks? Things that you are having people do that will never see the light of day, that is the shadow work of your organizations, that is not appreciated, right? We need less of these, right? But, and people need to know this. So what are the thankless tasks? So that's a lot of effort for very little reward. So I present this in a little bit, and this is just some quick solutions for us as an organization. And thinking about this across a time span, on the left-hand side are our actions that we took in around 72 hours. On the right-hand side are things that we took over the next three months. And again, I'll expose my fallacy a little later, we created a 3-month plan, right? And this isn't mentioning all the long-term projects, all of the things that we were keeping an eye on, operations, a 60-page reopening plan, and adequate training for public safety and health, and making sure visitors felt our teams felt psychologically safe to return to our spaces and understood the organization was caring about them. So I'll use some of these as examples today as case studies as to how we are really showing care. And to jump right into it, I mentioned about how do you translate this physical space? So I'll show you some case studies, but as you're experiencing this, I want you to think about what are the most popular experiences, works of art, and locations. Find out the real reason why, not the reason that you set out to put them into practice. What is the real why? And give them more of it. So for us, the Tibetan Buddhist Shrine Room, this was a space that we had in our permanent collection galleries. We expanded it in 2015. And it's really meant to be a space that's to provide a place to bring our art into context, right? Himalayan art displayed on the walls in a very Western museological display is not how the art would be understood according to practice and cultural tradition. You would see it much more akin to this. Now, this would be a wealthy shrine room, right? And other people's lives, it's a postcard and a bottle of Mountain Dew does the same thing, right? So this was very much at its outset, we want to create a space where people can see art in context, help them experience the beautiful objects that surrounds them, and have a moment to reflect. We did have that in there, but it was 100% object driven, and it was about art and context. Now, what we learned from this is that audiences began forming habits with the space. There'd be a woman that I remember her quite viscerally. Doors would open on Thursday morning. She would spend 15 minutes in the shrine room every single Thursday as a habit. It was her must-have, and she never missed a day. We knew after terrorist attacks would hit, after people's lives would fall apart, after they would lose people, I would hear from conversations from my teams at the admissions desk. And they would say, I just need to get up to the shrine room. I just need to reflect. I just need to make meaning of this world. I can't believe what's just happened to me. I can't believe what's just happened to us. And that's the moment of the pandemic. What has just happened to us? And now this space that we knew was a source of comfort and care was taken away. We knew our space offered that. So a simple intervention of that was, let's bring this into a video format, right? Let's let our audiences put it on their screens, take the shrine room with them. And we didn't just offer a photo, right? We didn't just put a photo. There wouldn't have been an issue with that. But for us, it's about the experience of it. So there's chanting. You can hear males chanting. You can hear folks who identify as nuns chanting as well. But it was so much about recreating the feeling and letting them bring that into their homes and giving them permission to do that. So we did this day before everything locked down for us, and we're able to push it out. When I checked Ready, we had almost 70,000 views of this, which for an organization our size, or you might see it 1,000 views or 100, let's admit that sometimes that happens, right? To see this a level of response and people putting it on repeat in their lives to feel a sense of calm, right? So the chance to slow down, reflect, and do that in their own lives. My next point, so moving away from caring for people in physical space, some of the other presenters talked about this as well. What are the things that you already have, right? That you can look around. So, and what are the ways you can reframe your existing legacy, new jargon word, legacy content to be responsive to audience needs at a given moment? Find the common threads. What are the ways that you know what audiences need specifically, and your content can be reframed in a new and imagined way to serve that. Be specific, be imaginative, right? Let go of the original authority of it and create something new. So for us, again, going back to quick response, so I'd be in that quick win category, we created the Reuben care package, art and practices for navigating our world. I remember Friday night, I helped shut down the museum. I got off all the Zoom calls with the team. I began looking through all of our archival content, talking to other colleagues, throwing together. By Monday morning, we were in conversations with our web teams, making this come to life. Because we had a treasure trove, 5 years of blog posts, audio tours, videos, all these different ways to do this. And here we have so much to say about this. Our art has a way to understand how to move through this. So what this allowed us to do, we connected art, we connected articles, we connected videos, we connected resources, and we created a way to immediately respond to what was happening in culture. So Stop Asian Hate, you see down here. We created resources for AAPI communities to find support and other individuals to learn how they could support Asian American communities during the pandemic. We provided access to our previous offerings. So again, remember that question about how can my marketing teams find a clear way to understand what's happening for visitors? This became a way to consolidate our efforts to always go here. On the analytics side of things, for those of you who love that, almost 3/4 of the people were coming were first-time visitors. So if they knew nothing about the Reuben, right, they immediately knew that we were a space that was here to support them and provide care. We were a museum that was here to care and think about you and help you have very specific ways that you can connect to our art content. So some of the things, just to give you some examples here, some ways that we did it: repackaging articles around the idea of how to harness your emotions and really navigating things for your mind and how to deal with anxiety. We've had a successfully running mindfulness meditation series over the past years and a podcast. So we knew that we already had this content. It was always a singular instance. Here was the moment to repackage it differently. As lockdown continued on, other ways, the isolation that individuals are feeling, our family programs are pivoting up content. How do we really sustain intergenerational connection and get people to connect and create together, right? Whether you are doing this with your teenage daughter or son, or somewhere in the middle, and a grandparent, or it's just two friends, there's content for you. And immediately after the uprising in 2020, the murder of George Floyd, the election. Do we remember how intense that was? The election, right? And we came out successful, but nonetheless, right? So, but there was an opportunity for people to really engage with change here, right? And to feel empowered. And we had content that was ripe for this conversation, and our content had so much to say that we had already produced. Right? So here was an opportunity to reframe, pull it together, and help people understand, here's how you can engage with this. Here's some things to start your journey, right? This isn't an end. We're not providing answers. We're providing opportunity for further inquiry in your life. All right. So moving on to the next piece. And this is a question I have for all of us to think about. What habits could audiences form with works of art? The work that all of us do, the work that many folks do in cultural organizations, is bigger than any organization. We have an opportunity that it's impacting the way that we're creating cultural consumers for the future. It's a practice for the rest of their lives. The experience that someone has at the Met or the Cooper Hewitt or any other organization is an experience they're going to take with them. If an interaction point, if they felt let down, if they felt excluded, if they were treated poorly, your museum is nothing but the same, right? You have that hurdle that you have to overcome before they walk in the door. So everyone that's working in the cultural sphere, you are creating a new legacy. You are impacting audience experience for the future, breaking down barriers, helping people in, and helping them imagine this is how art can function for you. right? And people will choose a different organization because that's where they want to spend their time or what they're impassioned about, and that's fine. But it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to help people imagine new ways of experiencing art. Something that the first time I set foot into a cultural organization, I was 19 years old, because I had never thought that museums could be spaces, you know, for folks like me. It was for always other folks as a young queer teen from a very small town. So the idea of opening up spaces, and it took one interaction with me to say, hey, museums can be different. Museums can be spaces for people like me. How can I make sure I continue that and welcome in new generations? So I'll go into a little bit of a case study that we did. So this goes into the major project category. We knew the museum was closed down. The habit we wanted to create was every day that we were closed, we wanted you to have a way to connect with us. Every day, there's a habit. We wanted to build that habit. And we wanted to be able to have an opportunity for them to experience a work of art that they might not have thought possible, or thought that could be a source of support or connection. Do a brief exercise and have a centering thought at the end. So something that you can take away. It started with art and it took you somewhere radically different. So as you can see in the corner, our first one launched April 2nd. And there we went on a 35 video sprint. So it was quite the journey. And I'll try and successfully play this so you can get, this is the first video. We improved a little bit, formula stayed the same, but in the spirit of vulnerability, I'll give you our first one.
My name is Dawn Eshelman. I am head of programs at the Rubin Museum of Art, which is a museum of Himalayan art and ideas in Chelsea, New York City. And we're coming to you during this unprecedented and kind of crazy time because we want to stay connected and we miss you all. So we also have a little offering in store for you. We know that art and meditation and mindfulness can really help us stay grounded during a time like this. So each day, every day that the museum would normally be open from Thursdays until Mondays, we will bring you a daily short little video, and we'll explore an inspiring artwork, a meditation or mindfulness practice, and then a centering thought that you can take with you. Today, we are looking at the beautiful protectress, Tara. This is a 13.
So if you enjoyed that, you can visit us at rubinmuseum.org for more. So so nonetheless, right? So Dawn said it more succinctly. So the video moves through the art, close looking of the art object. And then for each video, we brought together a meditation teacher, a musician, a Tibetan medicine doctor, a range of individuals who had something to say about how audiences could care for themselves through cerebral ways, through physical ways, through community connections and more, and leaving them with just one takeaway, right? So for Sharon Salzberg, take one breath each day. Right? It could be make a cup of hot water in the morning, right? These are simple things that originate with art and then move into real action that people can take away and say, I didn't know Himalayan art could help me understand the world this way, right? All right, let's see if I can advance. Nope, not yet. There we go. So some of the feedback that we were getting, we saw such gratitude outpouring. We've heard Sophie was mentioning about the comments and the emotional support that people were feeling. Thank you for this medicine. Each of these has been very meaningful, feeling teary, thank you. I've begun on letting go through all of this, interesting to see and hear, right? So we're seeing such really powerful feedback as part of this. Again, a couple of quotes here. I'll direct your attention to the bottom one. As I drive to and from the hospital where I work every day over this recent time, the posts in the Reuben have been an amazing source of encouragement and comfort. And I have the Shrine Room video on chanting on perpetual. loop. So people really talking about how this brought them together, people that were in lockdown. I had individuals writing out to me, I couldn't see my daughter, so we made sure we got on the phone and we connected, and we did this every day. People were beginning to form their own relationships and how to stay connected, and art was the center point for that connection. So again, I didn't warn you this time. This is a bar chart. So, but a little bit of feedback. An organization of our size, showing you a little bit on the left. The comments for posts, normally we'd see 11, 40 per video. Did I tell you we did over 30 videos, right? So we had a lot of opportunities below that average. So 40 there, average video views up to 3,500, right? Over 100,000 views. And this is, you know, just during the first three months or so. And then in the first 2 months, we saw an Instagram growth following of over 4,000, so a 10% growth to what we saw. So this repetitive action, creating a habit, encouraged people to hit follow, encouraged them to stay connected, and said, hey, this is a place that's here to support me during this time. So we produce this massive effort, and we're beginning to think about, all right, so we're getting ready to go back into the space. I'm working on a task force to think about how we safely do that. How do we really merge? How do we have something that starts digital and moves over to the physical space, and also support what audiences need in this specific moment, right? How can we be of service? And for us, and I think what's interesting about the future and where we're going is this conversation about what's physical and what's digital, right? It's exploded, it's breaking down. This is the mandatory now, right? And there's a beauty to that. It's no longer serving visitors who can come to your physical locations. It is your mandate. It is your mandate to serve them where they are, full stop. So our way of doing this, I began really thinking about, and I encourage many of you, what is the type of connection that can art facilitate? Get specific and fill that need. I say this because I have totally used this. I want to make meaningful connections with works of art. Audiences will make meaningful connections with works of art. Repeat, 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 right? It's fabulous, right? There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of openness. But when you solve specifically for the type of connection, you begin to have a new way of approaching how you can serve people. So the type of connection that I was thinking about here is I was preparing for this presentation, and I looked at the date on the briefing doc when I presented it out, and it was April 22nd. And so not a lot of time had passed, and we're already thinking about the future of reopening, right? And I was looking around at the art, and one of the things that really stood out to me was we have this motif of the lotus. You see it up here in the left-hand side, that little white flower. And the concept of the lotus is it grows in the muck, grows in the darkness, it's difficult, and it comes out on the other side, blooming atop, right, and pure. But what that lotus knows about itself is it knows its journey it went through. Even if no one else can see it, it knows what's underneath the surface, right? So thinking about this as being a metaphor for the time, quite aptly. Also, going back to this point of connection, earlier in that month, I had found out that someone I had deeply cared about in my life had took their own life to suicide. And the mental health crisis, we know it's ongoing, it's always been an issue, but what happened during this time, we know that isolation, it's changed people, it impacted them. They felt like they had nowhere to go, right? How do you feel connected to people again? When you, even sending a text message suddenly is like an amount of labor because you're thinking about your own things. And it's not that you don't care and don't want to reach out, but there's that physical connection of saying, I got your back, I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. I want to think about you, was the real impetus around this. So what we ended up doing was a collaborative project where we were asked audiences to engage in a quite simple activity, right? We worked with an outside artist to create a Origami Lotus, right? And so creating with the hands, right? physical art reduces stress. So thinking about the modality, going back to audience segments, we have a lot of creatives within our audience segmentations that come to the organization. So we knew there's a market here for it. Repetitive action, again, slowing down, repetitive action, doing that together. All of these things really, as a design, meant to reduce stress in people's lives. But also the simple act, asking people to share this, but also one of the things that was the part of the directive was dedicate this to someone else. Tag on social media, say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, thanks for supporting me. And, as you see at the bottom, this it started online. And when we came back to the museum, it was a physical installation. So we asked people around the world to mail in what they made, participate online. We started having conversations with other museums to do that for their own visitors. That, ambition, we got to calm down a little bit, right? But the whole point of this is we didn't know what the future was going to look like. We still don't today. We still don't. But we want there to be hope, and that we have to believe that healing can be possible, right? So going back to that connection, can art, like how much can art do? I 100% understand the limitations, but we have to imagine new realities and the potential for it, right? We have to imagine that art can be a connector during times of need. And that's something I believe in quite heavily. So when we came back to the space, the outpouring, what we saw from audiences was just breathtaking. During Thanksgiving, there was retirement centers that were folding in groups because they couldn't see their loved ones. So it was a way for them to dedicate it to each other, to staff and beyond. Even just the act, if they never did it, thinking about the people that they loved and cared about. There was a family that wrote in who lost their daughter, 15 years old, to a terminal illness. It was like, she would have loved this. It was so great to really reflect and think about her and what her experience of this would have been. So the outpour of empathy, gratitude, connection, connecting with others in a new way, it was care central, right? And one of the things from the what we had noticed from it in looking at this, for every 5 views, I saw the video. We had a video that detailed how to make it. For every 5 views, we saw almost one physical lotus come into the museum. It was the highest, what are called dwell time, the amount of time people are hanging on the website. Over 5.5 minutes, people were hanging out on this website. That is huge. That is extraordinary as far as numbers, because people were engaged in this so deeply, doing it with loved ones, etc. So again, as you can see here, some dedications, people are writing in, thank you, fold yourself a little serenity, care is at the center of this. And even delivering on our promise over here on the left-hand side, everyone that submitted via the hashtag, you got featured here, right? We were delivering on that. That's what we said we were gonna do. You can't come from Spain, you can't make it from Jamaica, you're here with us, right in the center of the museum, which is a free space. So come, enjoy it. So I think with this, it's an example, this is one example of how you might think about connection and solving for that, right? All right, so let's do a little quick reflection. What we got wrong, we thought the closure would last till June 30th. Yeah, that was misguided. We totally also thought that programs would return when the museum, yep, that was wrong. We're gonna keep going. But this is a takeaway. Don't be so clever with the branding and what you call things that it misleads or confuses. So Reuben care package, great. But actually, am I getting something? Are you gonna send me goods? What does it mean? Right? It became a place to go, but there's some issues, especially in thinking about that quite transparently. And this one should be obvious. We produced 35 videos in 6 weeks. We totally burned through all of our content. And very quickly, given our unknown return timing, right? So just thinking about, there's arguments to be made, but in this case, we burned through our content quite quickly. Now, what do we get right? Steady and focused content streams provided more clear messaging opportunities externally. Focus, focus, focus. By focusing these content efforts, it allowed staff to zero in on initiatives. They could focus on what was asked of them and not feel frantic and not knowing what was happening next. Saving energy of our staff helped them keep an eye on long-term exhibition projects and other creative efforts. Sophie had mentioned this. Prioritizing our collection allowed for evergreen content. We had a rich contemporary show with big name artists. We're not going to get the miles out of that content. We found different ways, fill-in ways, quick wins to bring that to people's lives, but we spent the bulk of our efforts amplifying what you could always expect from the Reuben. I can't guarantee some of the other stuff, but I can tell you a lot about our core offer. So again, admit who has the advantage. We have great K through 12 programs, but with limited staff, other organizations were more competitive in this model. So this allowed our K through 12 teams to think about the future and the future of their programs instead of feeling burnt out to pivot and reinvent themselves in this moment, especially in this first couple of months. Members needed special attention, right? Because things weren't available. That was a thankless task, but it deeply satisfied members, right? Lastly, themes of care resonated and provided relief for both staff and visitors. It's not just for the audiences. Staff had the opportunity to work with this content and think about these themes in their own lives. So I'm going to pivot a little bit to what's next, and I'll be close to wrapping up. But what is your why, right? What transformations do you think art can provide? And invite audiences to try it with you. So a way a lot of these digital efforts really began coming together was a project that you can see at the museum right now called the Themondo Lab, where emotions can turn to wisdom. A space that is specifically designed to help our audiences think about difficult emotions, as can be explored in the work of art in the collection, and go through a series of different exercises to imagine what knowledge and wisdom they can gain from it. So from anger, how can I learn patience? From ideas of pride, right, and a self-centered view of the world, how can I approach things without judgment, right? Again, the key word I want to use here is invitation. We are not promising transformation. It would be unethical to do so, but we are inviting our audiences to participate with us wherever they are at. Next point, how this leads into it. We're talking so much about healing and care. Ask audiences. When you don't know, ask. And if you think you know, ask anyways, right? So ask audiences. So a project that we just opened up as of last Friday, Healing Practices Stories from Himalayan Americans. We pivoted quite quickly, began working with a community advisory group of individuals to talk about what does healing mean? How is healing showing up in your everyday lives? How are you adapting the materials that we have at the museum in different ways? So this entire exhibition, and we talk a lot about, for some of you, you're very familiar with community advisory groups. And for us, this was a huge effort for us to achieve in a quite short amount of time. We produced our first bilingual show with Tibetan and English, a huge, huge milestone moment. Rachel, I think, talked about transformative moments, right? This is a transformative moment of being able to have a bilingual show for us at the museum, and then other scores of multimedia content. Definitely invite you all to experience it. And again, at the core, to help people think about what is healing, how do we heal moving forward, and what are some steps we can take. Now, my last point, I'm going to go through what I call some of my top 10 takeaways here. And it's all about employee experience. Because when we talk about digital, employee experience is at the center of it. Employee experience equals audience experience, right? The better you're doing internally, the better your visitors are served. Your visitors cannot be let down because you're figuring out what's happening behind closed doors, right? So if you are dependent, it does not matter what role you are in an organization, there's ways that you can participate in this. So these are going to feel like table stakes, right? These are the things that must have in organizations, but I love to state the obvious, right? Because consider the emotional states of your employees and allow for moments of joy and laughter. It's not just task lists. It's not just status updates during moments of change, right? Have those moments of reflection. Offer stability through honesty, consistency is key, and humanity. Operationalize your practices so anyone that's in your organization as a digital producer understands how what they're making should make audiences feel, right? You can do a lot of different things and types of content and what you're pushing forward, but how do you want them to feel at the end of it? How are you anticipating what they need? How are you reflecting them, right? It's your job to help build that, right? And depending on where you are in that organization, to be a part of building that so you can do it consistently. Create a plan for how digital will fit into your organization in the future of your work. During this time, recognizing the needs of the organization, I helped lead the development of our first digital strategy for our organization that kicked off this year, right? With new plans, hiring plans for digital capacity, and really charting out, now that we've gone digital, right? What's next? People are asking, we have to tell them, right? Understanding that pivoting employees outside their comfort zone is not a sustainable model and staffing is needed. I love a good obvious statement, but being outside your comfort zone, yes, discomfort is growth. I can go there with you toe to toe in that conversation all day. Living in discomfort is burnout. That cannot happen. So especially for anyone who has hiring managers, depending on where you are, really thinking about this in a clear way, right? Asking people to do more than what they're expected, even if it's an interest set. How is it confusing your organization by living in this world and cutting costs, right? A couple more points. Clearly prioritize your offers and openly identify what things are experiments, right? Say that language, tell people, it gives them forgiveness, it gives them kindness, and allows them to be okay to make mistakes. And again, allow people to make mistakes, right? I showed you the very first thing that we had produced, right? And we learned a lot. The point is aiming for progress, not perfection, right? We're growing. It's a long game. It is a long game for our field. Embrace the complexities of collaboration, right? It is a necessity for our shared success, not a nicety. So I have heard the phrase, I've used it myself, too many cooks in the kitchen. I was a server for many years. I went into a kitchen and I've seen kitchens work well. And what helps them work well is that people know what their roles are and how they're meant to function, right? So, and this is something we have to collaborate together in order to go further. And about that, when you're bringing together those different voices, be clear on why they're in the room. And it's not just about sign off. It's not just because you understand content. That's not what this is about. This isn't just about accountabilities. When someone understands why they're showing up in a room, it empowers them. It says, I have agency in what's happening. I have respect. Other colleagues begin to engage with them in that way. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And again, joy. Please, we need joy. Remember it. Celebrate it, make space for it, rinse and repeat again and again and again. So before I log off here, I'll leave you with a Maya Angelou quote, which many of you know, but I think it's pertinent. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And it's our responsibility to keep that in mind in our work and for our visitors. That's it for me. Thank you.